Yeah, good evening, everybody. This was supposed to be, as I was saying, a ward round on a bowel fistula, but for various circumstances, our students felt that they were not ready for it yet. And so I have, on their request, I have decided to share my experience with pictures of a road trip that I undertook to China recently. I was on the trip on the road from 3rd to 28th of August. And I went with my surgeon colleague from Gulbarga, Sharad Tanga. This is Tanga, Sharad, with me on the Great Wall of China. All right. What I'm going to do is share the whole process, and it will be interesting for all of you. It is to be remembered that this is not a holiday. This is an expedition. An expedition is a lot more exacting than a holiday. You have various you can call hardships on the way, long hours of driving, no breakfast, maybe no lunch, maybe no accommodation. All kinds of things can happen. A lot of uncertainty, both in the road conditions, in the weather conditions, vehicle condition, and your own health. And it's I can say it is very similar to trekking, where there are uncertainties when you go. This, in fact, was organized by an organization called Wander Beyond Boundaries. It is headed by a young lady from Bangalore, actually. Her origin is from Bangalore, called Nidhi Salgame. And she's in her mid 40s. She's been an adventurer right from her teenage. She has been undertaking expeditions here and there. In fact, she had done a solo trip just all by herself, a 4,000-kilometer drive to Siberia, a place called Magadan. So on this occasion, she had planned a group expedition, total of 22,500 kilometers from Mumbai to a place called Magadan in Siberia. And initially, she had said that we had to take our own cars, that all of us should go the whole distance. And I felt that it was 2.5 months of travel was too much for me. I said I was not interested. But then she changed it, perhaps because she didn't get many people. And so she changed it to in two different ways. One, she opened it in segments for us. So we were allowed to take a segment, whatever segment we chose. So some of us went from Mumbai to Beijing. Some others went from Beijing to Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia, and others went from Beijing all the way to Magadan. And we chose this 8,000-kilometer travel between me and Sharad Tanga. And it started in Mumbai. We went a couple of days earlier. And you have to sign documents, waiving the company of all responsibility with dangers and, physical harm and accidents and things like that. You're insured for it, but you have to sign those documents. And they also give you nice kits. The kits had warm clothing, for example, a very nice warm jacket, because in Siberia, it's extremely cold. But our segment wasn't very cold, except in the heights of the Himalayas. And various other things like car adapters for charging and kettles and things like that. The cars were given to us by Mahindra. Mahindra, for their advertisement, they give you these vehicles. We had three Mahindra Thar automatics. All of them are automatic vehicles. One Scorpio and one XUV 700. And you can see the red things on top there. These are extra diesel cans that we fitted. So between them, they can hold 40 liters. So if we have difficulty somewhere in the outback where you have no petrol bunks, where diesel is not available, we'll not be stranded. So all the cars were fitted with those extra diesel cans. And the rear seats on the Thars were removed. There are only two seats, the driver and the co-driver. All right, because you need the space in the back for your equipment. All right, this is an extremely dusty day. This didn't happen in our segment. It happened in Mongolia after we had come back actually. But I took the picture to show you the kind of preparations that we have had to have before we left. This red box is full of food, ready to eat food from MTR or Adukle or something like that. Biscuits, coffee, tea, and like that. If you're stuck in the middle somewhere, we can survive. We can pitch a tent. That is a tent there. You can see a little red handled bag. That's a tent there. You have mats which you can use. You have a high fidelity, as they call it, a very good sleeping bag which can take up to minus 10 degrees centigrade. You know, even if you're freezing outside, you won't feel it when you're inside that sleeping bag. And you have kettles, you have flasks to carry hot water in your car throughout the day, and you have these big Bisleri bottles, 20-liter bottles of water. So we were always carrying, you know, one tank, one big bottle in each car, so that we are never without water. Whatever you don't have, you may skip food, you may skip, you know, coffee, tea, or whatever, but you will be warm when required. You will have a roof over your head in the form of a tent, and you'll have enough water. These are survival requirements when you are driving on expeditions like this. May I say that you can, you know, raise your hands or ask whatever you want, and I'll also be monitoring the chat box, so you can put questions in the chat box also. Okay, please feel free to do so. And you know, and then, you know, don't hesitate to interrupt me, because there may be some things that you might that I might miss, and you might want to know the details. Okay, so this is the kind of you know, loading that we do in the back of the Thars, and of course Scorpios and XUVs have very big boots, and so they had that also. But the capacity, 4 people could sit in Scorpio and 3 in the XUV. They had flattened one of the rear seats, so that I'll tell you why you need the 3rd person there. We had, as I told you, 10 people and 5 cars. And in China, you will always have one guide going with you. So he was the 11th person of the group. And as it happens everywhere, we found a pujari on the net, and everything started with puja for the cars. Many of us were agnostics. So is Nidhi, but she went through the motions, being the leader, to make everybody else happy, so that they would start off on a positive note. As I told you, Mahindra had sponsored the vehicles. I mean, it was helpful in that, you know, we got the vehicles, we didn't have to take our own, but all the expenses were paid by us. They gave us the cars in Mumbai, and they wanted it back in Mumbai. And when we go to Magadan, Siberia, for example, we have to get the cars back from there. And so the idea was to bring the cars to Vladivostok, which is a port, and ship them back to Mumbai. And we had to share, the group had to share the costs for that also. So it wasn't a very you know, cheap kind of expedition, but it, nevertheless, once in a lifetime experience, and so we didn't really grudge the money that we paid. SEAT gave us the tires. They gave us brand new tires. The cars were not brand new. Each of them had made something like 12 to 20,000 kilometers. They used these cars only for these adventure trips, the Mahindras. And SEAT had given us brand new, you know, off-roading tires, 5 of them for each car. And they were to replace them at their cost with winter tires when the expedition entered Russia. That was their undertaking. So even though we drove, myself and Sharad, only on these tires, the expedition has actually now reached Russia. And I know that when they crossed over from Mongolia to Russia, that they had a change of tires for winter tires, again provided by SEAT. Okay, and just like you have a passport for humans, if you want to take cars across countries, you have to have a permission called the carnet. You know, it costs something like, it's over 1 lakh to get a carnet permission, and the Western India Automobile Association, WIAA, gives you that permission. And so when we were in Bombay, the handing over of the permission was a ceremonial event. They wanted some photo ops. All these things got featured in the press, and SEAT and Mahindra, of course, are very keen to use this for their publicity as well as an advertisement. So we had that ceremonial send off from the WIA office. So on the third morning, very early in the morning, actually, we left from Mumbai. First day, the India leg, which was three days, we had no plans of any sightseeing. We went from Mumbai to Indore. You can see this time on Google, okay, on the Google Maps. You can easily add 90 minutes to it. It's very important that, we have breaks. We had several breaks. We may have coffee breaks, lunch breaks, bio breaks here and there. And so it takes time. And this Daba fellow, you can see the guy on the phone, was very excited about to learn about our trip. He was so excited that he gave us tea free of cost. He refused to take money for the tea he provided. And he was so computer savvy and phone savvy that we had QR codes on the cars, printed QR codes, where people could just see it and then get on to Instagram and the website of WBB. So the guy promptly used that QR code and very excited to see the plan. And he said he would follow our trip all along, all the time. Okay, that was his his enthusiasm, and it very, very pleasantly surprised me. There's a concept of bonnet cafe. We showed you some flasks there. So every morning, each car will have a flask full of very hot water, and we don't wait even to get to dabas or hotels when you want some coffee break. So we just pull our cars to the side of a road, one of the laybys, and then you have a bag full of tea, coffee, ready to drink, and some snacks and things like that. So that's the concept of bonnet cafe, which is very, very important. The other thing I must impress upon you is that the convoy of 5 cars is a very disciplined kind of undertaking. The leader decides every morning as to what the order is. So you have the lead and there's a sweep. Sweep is again, it was driven by our master mechanic, the lead mechanic called Sushil. And lead will be the first car driven by Nidhi. Sweep will be the last car driven by Sushil. And the 3 cars in between, the 3 Thars, will each day, the order changes. It may be, these were called W1, W2, W3. For some reason, they call it Whiskey 1, Whiskey 2, Whiskey 3. So one day, Whiskey 1 will be behind the lead. Next day, it may be Whiskey 2. The lead decides that. Every morning and evening, we have what's called a circle. So they tell us, the lead tells us what that order is and where we're going to reach, what are the difficulties that we may face, and things like that. And every evening there's a debriefing, and they tell us, what our experiences were, what our difficulties were, and things like that. Very well organized. And we also have a walkie-talkie, that is constant radio communication among all the 5 cars. So it's our job to make sure that we charge the walkie-talkie every night. Overnight, we put it for charge. Next day morning, we get into the cars and then we test the walkie-talkie, and we keep regular chatter to know exactly what's happening, where we are going, and things like that. It's a very safe and a very well organized trip. And you can see here, the next day we went from Indore to Agra. All right. And there was a traffic jam in one of the places, and Google gave us a 7-kilometer detour. And we went through some very narrow roads in villages. Okay. And so you'll see that we had a very exciting sojourn or a drive through some very narrow alleys in the villages there. The other interesting thing is this. Can you see something unusual? Can somebody tell me what is unusual about this photograph in the top left? Remember, this is a national highway.
The road, sir.
Correct. This is a national highway. And I think it's a very sad thing, actually. I think both in Madhya Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh, we're crossing over from Indore in Madhya Pradesh to Agra. And both in Madhya Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh, because they have banned cow slaughter, these are completely neglected cows. These are not regular cows which are looked after by cowherds. They're just left free and to fend for themselves, and they are on the highway. You really slow down because they're sleeping on the highway, they're crossing the highway, they have a free for all. And in long segments in this route from Indore to Agra, we came across a lot of cows, which really was disturbing to us, all of us. And disturbing more not because of inconvenience to our driving, but because of the sad state of affairs for the cows. Okay. And the next one, we went from, you can see the map here, Agra to Gorakhpur. Okay, that was our third day of travel in India. First time in my life, I saw a formal highway service station. I don't know if you guys have seen it elsewhere. My wife told me that there's one on the way to Tirupati, which I had not seen. But, this is a nice formal service station. Service, when I mean comprehensive service, there's a hotel, there's a shop, there is a cafeteria, a restaurant, petrol bunk, and things like that. Everything available, like you see, adjacent to a highway in the west. So this was a very nice place. You also had some wildlife there. And very interestingly, there is a lovely, this highway between Agra and Lucknow is absolutely top class. Expensive because it costs you 400 rupees toll for a 250-kilometer distance approximately. But because of the toll, there are very few vehicles. They take alternative routes, and so there are very few vehicles. The highway is great, and we could zip at 120 kilometers an hour without batting an eyelid. Very interestingly, a part of that highway, maybe 4 or 5 kilometers long, you can see the markings here, is actually a runway. I believe there are 2 or 3 such things in the country where it is done by the IAF, Indian Air Force. They can land and take off jets from here. It serves as a backup for actual airfields, because if you have war and some airfields are bombed and things like that, they can use the highway as a runway. And that was a new experience that I had. We had a little problem with my car. The sensor which senses heat was malfunctioning. All right. And so even though the car was not overheating, the sensor was saying that it was overheating and it would slow down my car. So the other interesting thing is Mahindra is invested. They don't want any problems with this car because it's an ad for them, it's an advertisement for them. So our team leader, Nidhi, had a direct line with the chief of design and maintenance in Mahindra, not an ordinary person, one of the top fellows. And he made sure on the phone, when we described our problems, of course, it was very nicely elucidated by our lead mechanic. When he discussed it, they said it's a malfunctioning sensor. And so they had it airlifted from Mumbai to Kathmandu. So from Gorakhpur, the next day we reached Kathmandu, and as soon as we went there, that sensor was replaced and we never had any problems there. But I highlighted this to give you an idea of the kind of backup that you have when you go to these places, because beyond Nepal, there is no Mahindra, in China or Mongolia or Russia. So our cars, including our own and all the cars, had spares, including axles. If we broke an axle, we could replace an axle. They had all kinds of spares that they would normally expect, brake linings, belts, and our mechanic was trained enough to replace those things. So it gave us a lot of confidence and a lot of safety. We passed by Ayodhya, just out of interest. That's why I circled it. We didn't get into Ayodhya, and reached Gorakhpur that night. Okay. And after that, the next day, we went into the Nepal border. Okay. You can see as we crossed into Nepal, really the roads were terrible. Okay. It was like off-roading on a main road. I was told that these road works were going on for the last 4 years. Our leader Nidhi had gone there 4 years ago, And it was similar, very much like this. So it seemed to take forever for them to get the roads right, but it was a very bumpy ride to about up to an extent of 150, 180, 200 kilometers when eventually we reached Kathmandu. All right. Can I ask you, are you hearing any double voice when these videos run? Or you're listening only to hearing only my commentary?
Only your voice, sir.
Okay. Because I had organized it like that. Yeah, I didn't want a disturbance. Yeah. Okay. So we reached Kathmandu, and in Kathmandu we had to stay 3 days. What is interesting is that China had never given visa for on-road travel into China from India for 3 years. The last such visa given was for Kailash Yatris, people going to Kailash Mansarovar. And after COVID, they had never given it to anybody, and there was a little uncertainty. We had made enough, submissions, and we were reasonably certain that they would give us the visa, but we were not 100% certain. And if they had not given us the visa, we would have to come back. The whole mission would have been, whole expedition would have been aborted, and we would have to come back from Kathmandu. That uncertainty was there, a Damocles sword hanging on our heads, but we took that chance. We had to, we had no choice. They gave visas to reach China by air. That is not a problem. But going by road across Nepal into China, we were the first Indian group to do that after COVID. And even now, Kailash Yatris from India are not being given visas for some unknown reason, probably political. Anyway, we waited 3 days in Kathmandu. We stayed at a hotel, went to a music bar, went through that famous place called Darbar Square. And there's an area walking distance from a hotel called Thamel in Nepal. Those of you who know Kathmandu will know Thamel as a very nice area to walk about, do some shopping and things like that. We were whiling away our time basically in Kathmandu for 3 days, and eventually we got the visa. All right. And another tradition, if you like, of this whole expedition is most nights when we reach a destination in time, we all get together, and this is Nidhi, our team leader. This is me, of course, and Suri is an architect from United States. He lives in California, but a man from Bangalore. And this is Satish, one of our fellow travelers. He's an accountant in Bangalore. And this is Nandita. She is an interior decorator from Hyderabad. So you see that these were, and there's another lady called Smriti, who is from Hubli. So this was our group, and we all get together. They have a fellowship. I'm a teetotaler, of course. So I have some water, and others have some more interesting liquids to drink. And then we retire for the night. That is the standard. And we also have a nice chat, and there's a lot of bonhomie and good interaction in those sessions. And because we got the visa, rather late in the day, we got it at about 3 p.m. We could not, the border closes at 5 p.m. So we really could not cross into China that day, even though the distance is about 120 kilometers or so from Kathmandu to the border, 120 or 130 kilometers, the going is very slow. So they say it takes 4 hours. It actually took us 6 hours. So we actually decided to stay short of the Chinese border on that day. So we went to a place called Danshe. It's called Danshe. As you can see, the initial part was very nice forests and actually concrete roads as we left Kathmandu. But our happiness very soon became short-lived, because the weather deteriorated. The weather was very bad. It was raining all along, and but even then the views were extremely good. You have to experience it. It's difficult to capture it in photographs, but the views of the Himalayas is absolutely out of this world. It gives me a great high just to be in the Himalayas. Here you can see this is the other lady, our Smriti that I told you about. Smriti, who is from Hubli, and we were at a little tea place, taking a tea break. That's when she's looking through the window and you can see the valley beyond that. It's a very, very, very lovely drive. And we stayed at this place in Dunshe. It is a very small, basic thing, but still we had a clean room and a clean toilet. This is early in the morning at 6 o'clock. It was very nice of these people. We woke them up at about 10:30 to get into the hotel. And they got up very early in the morning and made us some noodles and boiled some eggs for us, just for us, very early in the morning. Very, very nice people. And on the way, the 20 kilometers that we drove up to, this is the path. This is Danshe here. And you go in this road to the border there. The road was terrible. Where, in fact, for the first time, we engaged the four-wheel drive. As you know, four-wheel drive gives you much more control. And when the car is sliding or not going over deep trenches and all that, you can go slowly but very steadily and safely with a four-wheel drive. You can see the deep trenches and the mud that is there. In fact, the car in front of us got stuck, but we managed to extricate it by its own power. But if by some chance I'll stop, can you see this guy sitting here? He is the cinematographer who is documenting the whole trip. So poor chap, from time to time, would get out of the car in the slush and mud and all sorts of terrains, and he would go out and then take photographs of these cars traveling. That was his job. He was paid for it, poor chap. But Milind is a very nice guy, but he really struggled. So you can see how these vehicles are struggling to go through, and but we managed to get through the whole thing without too much trouble. The other interesting thing was this. You can see in the lower left corner, helicopters. These are Kailash Yatris. Okay, they get, unlike our difficult travel on land, these guys get transported from Kathmandu to the border by helicopter. It's just a 30-minute flying time or something like that. And from the border, they pass through the customs. And you can see here on this side, this is the customs. We have cleared the customs and come on to the other side. This is the Chinese side. And once you reach the Chinese side, the roads are dramatically better. They're really excellent roads. And this is a guy called Tashi, who was our Tibetan guide who came to us up to Chengdu. Chengdu is another town, and another Chinese guy took over from there. And this is, as you know, there are cars on the other side of the Chinese immigration. The Chinese immigration is very, very thorough. All right, it's good. It took us 4 hours to cross the border. They don't do it quickly, but very well organized. They take out every single item of our luggage, scan everything. The immigration officers look at your paperwork very, very thoroughly. They even check your phones to make sure that you have nothing political there. If you had in your photographs or if your messages, if you have something about Dalai Lama and Tibet and anything controversial, you will be thrown out. You will not be allowed into the country. We were warned about it earlier, and so we had none of those things in our phones, but they checked everything and then let us through. Even though it took time, I must say that they were not unfriendly. They were quite thorough and quite friendly, and we did manage to clear the immigration without too much trouble. All right, any comments or questions until now?
Yes, Dr. Lakshman, I just put some preliminary comments of the beautiful scenes in front of me right now. So it just reminded me the trip, of course, when you are going in the flight to this one, the Paro airport.
Yes, Bhutan, it's lovely. The flight path into Paro is absolutely top class. Yeah, it's
That is nice of you. I'm actually, I cannot do all these things, but I'm just enjoying that.
Thank you. Yeah. So after we crossed over, we went to a little town called Gairong. It's also called Kirong. Interesting thing is that in China, Google doesn't work. Nothing. The Google Maps don't work unless you have international roaming. WhatsApp doesn't work. Google search doesn't work. You have to use a local chat program or software called WeChat, and you have to use for your maps a thing called Baidu. And Baidu is in Chinese. There's supposed to be an English version, but it didn't work for us. So we were basically dependent on the Chinese guide, his Baidu, and his knowledge of Chinese Mandarin to take us through. But he was in the lead car all the time, and he helped Nidhi to navigate, and we had absolutely no problem in navigating. The Baidu is as good as Google Maps, or probably even better. All right, so we stayed overnight at Gairong, and then even though our passage was actually to this place called Tingri, New Tingri. You can see, you can come straight like this, but we wanted to visit the Everest base camp. So as I told you, Kathmandu, even though we had been to Kathmandu before, we stayed there for 3 days for the visa, and so we did some sightseeing. No sightseeing in India, but China and everywhere else, Mongolia and Russia, there will be some sightseeing. So we wanted to visit as an iconic place as Everest Base Camp. We've been to Everest Base Camp on the Nepal side, the so-called south side, which is the much more common side where people mount the Everest, climb the Everest. No road there, so we trekked, and I've done trekking and reached the Everest Base Camp in 2010 or 11, if I remember. I also wanted to see the north side, Chinese side of Everest and its base camp. So we had a very long day that day. We left at 6 a.m. in the morning, all right, and reached sometime in the afternoon the Everest base camp, and then after some time they reached Tingri at 9:30 in the night. So we were actually on the road for 15 hours with breaks, of course. All these timings that I have put are with breaks, but not an iota of regret or difficulty we felt, because the scenes were absolutely divine. All kinds. I'll show you some very brief glimpses of the kind of terrain and the scenery that we saw, but absolutely divine. That is the only word I can use for that. One of the things is this: you can see Tibet is called the roof of the world. All right, it's called the roof because this flat land, which is about 150 kilometers or so, the distances, the heights, and the depths are humongous. They're huge. No other place in the world has that. So 150 kilometers or something, or 120 kilometers maybe, of flat land at an elevation of 14,000 feet. Everest Base Camp is 15,500. This is at 14,000 feet. And, lovely, beautiful lakes, lots of them, nice flat area, grassland. And Tibetans at this, there are no trees, only shrubs, if at all, at that height. And sheep rearing and nomadic life is the norm for Tibetans in that area. You also have these very bare mountains, brown all the way through. And if you guys have been to Ladakh, you will know that this resembles the Nubra Valley very much. When you drive across Ladakh, as we did, across from Leh, across the Kardungla Pass on to the Nubra Valley, the scenery and the terrain is very much like that. And when you reach heights, very quickly the weather changes. You can have low-lying clouds with poor visibility, with rain and difficulty in driving, but still not unsafe, because we would just slow down. We would have our lights on, fog lights on, we would have our hazard lights on, and we would just slow down. And fortunately, the roads were excellent. Surface was there, no potholes, no surprises, wide enough, and even very big lorries would be negotiating there, would be coming there. And this is the Everest Base Camp, okay? If any of you have seen the Everest Base Camp in Nepal, that is where actually the climbers would pitch tents and do their practice sessions for climbing. So you actually see the climbers who are preparing to climb. Nothing like that in this part. This has become a touristy place with a little monument there. And if you see this this point where my pointer is between in the valley between these two hills, that's where the Everest is. You can see it on a clear day, but ours, when we went there, was not a clear day. So we actually could not see the Everest. So if you keep walking in this direction, this path stops about 200 yards beyond this point. But if you keep walking like that, trekking for about 6 or 7 kilometers, you go to the actual camp where the climbers were. We didn't do that. We just stayed there. And we also remember this is at 15,500 feet. So we climbed about 8,000 feet, from that place Gairong, which was at about 7,000 feet or so, to this 15,500. So, altitude sickness is a real problem when you climb so quickly. So we decided that we would not stay there long. We spent maybe 45 minutes, 60 minutes there and made our way down. This is Smriti. This is the lady from Hubli. And this is Nidhi there, of course, standing there, and Sushil, the master mechanic, next to her. This is at the Everest base camp that we were. And the road to and from Everest base camp, when you keep traveling, is full of such hairpin bends. Nice, not very steep like you find in some Indian mountains. Very nice. And there were 108 hairpin bends. This looks pretty flat, but it's not flat. Take it from me, there must be at least a 2,000 feet difference between the part where we came from there to where we are standing. It is a steady but gradual climb, and these are so well designed that we even encountered huge lorries, goods lorries with 6 or 8 axles, 8 wheels, big lorries with heavy lorries, and the roads are designed. My respect for civil engineers in China went up several fold when I saw these roads, and I'll show you later on some tunnels and flyovers and things like that. Absolutely phenomenal civil engineering feat. And as I said, the view, photographs really cannot capture the beauty. An eyeful, whole day, we were like this, deep valleys, nice lakes, snow-capped mountains, and we had a fill of these beautiful scenery for the whole day, all the way through. It was really, really a mood-elevating experience for me. These are typical Tibetan village houses, very colorful. You can see them storing a lot of firewood and things like, food and meat and things like that at the top. They clear that. And this is the whole area of the Everest Base Camp is a national park. It's a protected area. And on the way back, we exited from that spot. We came from the Nepal side, but most Chinese tourists who come from mainland China enter the road from this area. We were coming out of that area, and as a photo op, we parked our 5 cars in front of it and took this photograph. Throughout, there was a stress on documentation and photography, both for the sake of documentation, and they're going to have a documentary on that sometime. It may come on YouTube or something like that. And CIAT and Mahindra would use it for their promotion as well. Okay. Yeah. Here you can see that when we went from that Tingri to the next place called Shigatse, which is the second biggest town in Tibet. Okay, you had this on the roadside on these valleys, which is at a high elevation, but still you have these huge mustard fields, lots of yellow, beautiful mustard flowers stretching for kilometers on end. Okay, and very interestingly, in Tingri, first time in my life, I've seen a regular hotel, an ordinary hotel with piped oxygen like in ICU. If anybody came down with, hypoxia because of altitude, the Chinese had thought of it and they had piped oxygen. None of us had to use it, but there you are. It was there, the oxygen for people. And the other issue with these cars, very minor issue, was that you would get false alarms. The lead car, you can see the bonnet up in that Scorpio. It kept showing her that the WEF, they use a fluid for emission control. It kept on saying that WEF was low. So we had carried WEF with us, that fluid, and we filled it up. We knew that the WF tank was full, but still it said it would be low. So again, we spoke to this fellow in Mumbai on the phone, and he said not to worry and just reset the electronics. So what they did was to disconnect the battery, that is the electricity to the car, for 10 minutes completely. Just completely disconnected everything. It is like switching on and switching on, switching off and switching on a computer. So when they disconnected the battery and connected back on 10 minutes later, then everything got settled. There's a lot of Nepali influence in Tibet, okay, and generally getting vegetarian food is very difficult in China. But in Tibet, up to this point, up to Lhasa, in fact, because of the Nepali influence, we could get vegetarian thalis. So you can get some dal and rice and some vegetables and things like that. So it was not too bad at all. But even if food was not available, we made do with eggs and fruits and some whatever bread and toast and things like that. So it wasn't a big issue, right? The interesting thing is, I told you about the carne the other day, that earlier. This is about the passport for the world for cars. But in China, they will have nothing of it. They don't recognize carne. They don't recognize our license, even our international license. So the nearest RTO after entering China, their equivalent of the RTO, Transport Office, was this place in Shigatse, a place called Shigatse. It's here, as you can see in the map. So we went to the RTO. We spent 3 hours there getting temporary licenses. This is my Chinese license, for example, and the temporary driving permit, it says, and a temporary registration new number for the car. And we had to, they give you a little board, a printed board, cardboard board, and we had to exhibit it on our windshield for the whole trip during China, during whole trip in China. The other interesting thing about Chinese cities, even smaller ones, are these beautiful street lights. They're never just lights, it's always decorated, always with some kind of bunting or a very colorful kind of decoration. And most cities in China are like that. And as I said, the civil engineering is phenomenal. These kinds of concrete with shrubs and grass in between are designed to avoid landslides. So if you have high hills next to your motorway, then they design this. And if you have a river or a deep valley, they don't bother going down the valley and going up again. They just build a huge, long flyover, which will take you straight to the other side. So they're really, really remarkable there. Okay, and then we reached Lhasa. Lhasa is the capital of Tibet, and it was my dream to go to Lhasa. In fact, I signed up for this trip only to go to Lhasa, because I'll show you a thing called Potala Palace. That was the seat of the Dalai Lama. Not anymore, it's just a museum now. But in 1959, as you know, the Dalai Lama had to come, run away to India, and the Chinese took over Tibet. But anyway, before that, that was the issue. You can see the changing terrain. You keep noticing the pictures that you have. You had green, flat area, big mountains. Here it's very muddy in this area, flat in places, hills in places. And this is our master mechanic, Sushil, and Tashi, our Tibetan guide. And we went into, as you can see, the drive here was only for about 5 or 6 hours. It wasn't very long that day. Some days the drives are very long, some days they're not that long. So when we reached Lhasa, we went to one of their music bars. There are many music bars in all the major cities of China. And so to me, the interesting thing was this. Okay, the first time that I have seen a bar serving fruit, which suited me fine. Most of the time they give you things like prawn and fish and things like that. And I keep far away from that. But here, I helped myself to a lot of fruit and felt very pleased about it. they along with this kind of singing, all Chinese, of course. We also had dance shows and all that. Our friends were late nighters. They would spend, a lot of time, maybe till 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. these places. I couldn't do that. I and my friend Sharad, we would just come away, would maybe spend half an hour or something there and then come away by maybe 11:30 or something like that, come back. That was our routine wherever we went. And we also made it a habit to have a regular walk. This guy, Satish, the accountant from Bangalore, he was my walking partner. Every morning, whenever we had time, some days we would leave at 6 a.m. So obviously walking was not a problem. If we were leaving the place anytime, it's called a rollout. When the rollout was anytime after 8:30, we would walk and walk and walk. Minimum 4 kilometers a day. And we would take that opportunity to do some fruit shopping. As I said, because we were vegetarians and vegetarian food was difficult, we always went into some shop, lots of fruits available, nectarines, bananas, apples, and grapes. These were easily available. So we used to load ourselves with fruits and have it for lunch. That was our routine. Questions and comments so far? Nothing? All right. This is the Potala Palace. My dream was to see this place. And I wondered whether it was hyped up or not. But I can tell you that having been there and having experienced it, there wasn't an iota of hype. It is a beautiful structure. This was the palace which served three purposes. One, it was the administrative kind of place for Tibet. It was the religious head. The Dalai Lama was both the administrative and the religious head for Tibetans those days. So there was a Buddhist temple, religiousness, that is the seat of the Buddhist religion in Tibet. It was the seat of administration. It also had the living quarters for the Dalai Lama and his staff. So it had three different functions, absolutely beautiful structure. It's on the hill, a very imposing structure, absolutely beautiful. And we went there, and these are the local Chinese tourists who are very, very friendly, because absolutely no English there. There is no English. We used the Google Translator, which fortunately worked for us with the international roaming. So we would either speak into the phone in English and that would speak to them in Chinese, or type something in English that would translate them into Mandarin, and the vice versa. They would give a reply in Mandarin and we would know it in English. So this kid was very, very curious about us, hadn't seen Indians before in life, and she had a lot of questions. And this is Priti, who is giving her all the answers. This guy is Ankit, he's another photographer. He was also a part of the team, and this is Nidhi, of course, our team lead. You'll see that we are in ethnic dress. Smriti is in a sari, she is in a salwar kameez, and I'm in a juba. It was 15th of August, and we had told ourselves before we started that on our Independence Day, we should go in an ethnic dress. And so we used that, and that was very nice as well. But we didn't show the Indian flag and ruffle feathers there. We had a very quiet celebration in our rooms that day. But we did have our ethnic dress on that day. That evening, it was a very fancy and expensive affair. But we went to a huge open-air theater with an opera. It is about a Chinese princess who comes and gets married to a Tibetan king in the 7th century. Huge sets, 800 performers, and this is on the hill opposite the Potala. You can see the Lhasa river here. This is the Potala Palace at night, all lit up and beautiful. We are standing on the other side of Lhasa and looking at Potala. This is the actual front of the opera or the theater. I was absolutely amazed to see, a horse racing on the sets. Up there in the distance, people used to race horses across the place. It was a phenomenal thing. I had not seen anything like that. The entrance fee is very stiff. 7,000, equivalent of 7,000 rupees. And, I was wondering whether it was worth it, but anyway, everybody went and I also went. And having gone there, no regrets about going there, because it was a very unique, experience. And to put up such a huge show, it would obviously cost a lot of money for them. Okay. And the next day in Lhasa, we went to the old Lhasa. The old Lhasa is known for its Buddhist temples and monasteries. This is one such temple called the Jokang temple. And the old Lhasa is again really nice. You can see, nice shops and eateries, and very, very colorful all the way along, very touristy place. All the Chinese tourists who come there, we didn't see many foreign tourists. We were perhaps the only Indians there. We didn't see Europeans or the Americans, but the local Chinese, Chinese come in large numbers. For them to come to Tibet is a good holiday, right? All right, questions, doubts? Is it okay? Is it boring?
No. It is.
No.
It is not boring because.
Okay. All right.
you have given such detailed and like your critical analysis.
Okay. So as long as it's
Yeah,
not boring, I'm fine. Yeah.
No.
All right. So from Lhasa, we went to a place called Lunang. Now we are trying to leave Tibet. It takes 3 days. Tibet is a huge place. It takes 3 days to get out of Tibet and reach the mainland China. All right. So you see that we went north from Kathmandu, but from there we are traveling east, and we are parallel to the Indo-Tibetan border. All right. You can see that at this point, we are only 150 kilometers from the Arunachal border. Right. Very, very close. And because we are so close to the border, you'll see a lot of military movement in that road. You can see that these lorries that I show here, at this point, are actually military convoys. These are military, helicopter sorties. We saw lots of them on our drive from Lhasa to Lunang. And on the way, there are again nice areas where people could have a go at archery. You can have this. Some of our friends did that, and you can have. We didn't take the horse riding, but you had opportunity for a horse riding. But we actually went to this place, which is a bit off the road. We just traveled about 10-15 kilometers off the road and went into a farm there. And this lady was good enough to let us into her activity of milking the yak. We also got some fresh yak milk. Tasted a sip of it, and it's really no different from cow's milk. So it's a very, very nice area. People really said it reminded them of Switzerland when we went there. Lunang is a lovely, lovely little town. The old town is beautiful as well, but they have built a nice hotel there, very nice hotel, on one side of the river, and on the other side you can see this area is full of hotel, restaurants and eateries. So we just spent the night there, and very beautiful areas, low-lying clouds and all that. It was so beautiful that some of our friends wanted to stay there another day. One of the advantages of a road trip is that you can actually, alter your program if you want to. It's not completely fixed. But some of us felt that, we didn't have much activity there other than walking. So some of us felt that we should we had enjoyed it for a day. And so we said one day is enough, and we moved on. Moved on to a place called Markham. What is remarkable about Markham is that on the way, you have villages with extra colorful buildings, really, really lovely buildings, houses. And Markham itself, can you believe that this is at 10:30 p.m., this picture? This is Satish and Suri with me. We just reached there by about 9:30 or so, had a little bite to eat, and we went for a walk. And extremely safe. You have citizens, young girls, safely walking around in the town. And we had asked the receptionist whether it's safe, and they had a little laugh and said, of course it is safe. So we just went there. Even at that time, fruit shops were open, and they received us. and spoke to us nicely. Perhaps I had never seen. It's a very small place. One of the things that you experience when you go on these expeditions is that you go to places where people would normally never see tourists. I'm sure they had never seen Indians there. Just pretty small town, and we just had stayed there overnight as a transit point rather than a touristy point. But it was a very nice experience for us to be there and have a walk in that small town. Then on the way beyond Markham, we went to a place called Yajiang. From Yajiang, we would go a little further and enter mainland China. This was the last point in Tibet. And again, I wanted to show the huge rivers you encounter. I can't remember their names now, but our guide used to give us names. All of them have 2-3 names. They have a Nepalese name, a Tibetan name, and a Chinese name. This one, I remember, it was called Kuilong River. Many rivers there. And just like you saw the sheep in the heights, near the Everest base camp, 15,500. We are now around 7,000 feet, and you see a lot more yaks here. These are the yaks, that is their cattle. And these white little pillars that you see are the second railway line that they're building. It will go up to Gairong, up to the Chinese border. Okay, they're building this railway line from Chengdu to Lhasa and beyond Lhasa to Gairong. So it's a new line being built. As you know, there already is one line in existence. It's a second line. And that Beijing to Lhasa railway line is an iconic line, which is a bullet train. It travels at 250 or 300 kilometers an hour. It's a bullet train that they have in China. Unfortunately, I don't know what the situation now is. 3 years ago, before COVID, when I wanted to do the trip, they were not allowing Indians to go on the train for some strange reason. Again, to stress that from time to time, the weather always deteriorated. Not for the whole day, but maybe for 4 or 5 hours in a day. We had to drive through fairly heavy, I may not call it torrential rains, but fairly heavy rains, which would slow our progress and reduce the visibility and the like. But that's a part of the adventure. That's a part of the adventure. And this is very interesting. This guy was a monk who actually was in Bailkupe. This was in Tibet, as you know, before we reached Yajiang. The Tibetans were having a 2-week fair there. And they have dancing and a lot of good fun and good food and all that. Lots of local people dolled up, all their finery with formal dress and all that. This guy had spent some time in Bailkupe, and he could ask us, Uta Aita. He knew a little bit of Kannada. And this is the kind of Tibetan dance that they have. You can see, unfortunately, they're not very clean people. They eat and throw everything right then and there amongst themselves. And I'm sure if cleaning this up would have been a mammoth undertaking. But anyway, these were the Tibetans who received us in a very friendly manner, and some of us joined them in their dance, and we spent an hour there and had good fun. From Yajiang, on the way to Chengdu, which is mainland China, we went and saw another iconic place called the Lishan. You can see L-E-S-H, Lishan Buddha. But before that, we used a part of this, you can see G318. Route 318 is an iconic route, very popular among Chinese. It is a 5,000 kilometer road between Nepal and Shanghai. That was the word I'm looking for. Between Nepal and Shanghai. And we were sort of getting in and out of 318. And you can see how beautifully they have built huge settlements in the valleys, and another very different kind of landscape that you go through. And because Route 318 is very popular among the local tourists, we did encounter crawling traffic. You would travel for maybe half an hour or so at 25 kilometers an hour on a highway because of the density of the traffic. And you can also see that as we near the mainland China, the buildings look more Chinese. You can have the classical upturned corners of the roof, very classical. You can see the transition from the Tibetan architecture to the Chinese architecture. And as I said, the hallmark of this area were tunnels and flyovers. If we encounter a mountain in India, for example, we have these winding hairpin bends going up and down and all that. None of that for the Chinese engineers and roads. This particular area had tunnels totaling about 55 kilometers. Okay. And the longest of those was 15 kilometers. And if you have a gap between two mountains, they bore a tunnel through one mountain, build a little bridge up to the other mountain, and then another tunnel. And really, and this is a unidirectional traffic, 2 lanes of road in one direction, and for the opposite side traffic, there is another tunnel adjacent to it on the other side. I'm sure it's very expensive, but the guys are, I think, pretty rich in China, and probably no corruption. And so you find tremendous roads in the form of tunnels and flyovers. I was very, very impressed. And on the way to Mount Imai, we went to a panda place, the iconic giant panda of China. The whole area is full of bamboo forests, and that is the natural habitat for the panda, and you can see the panda there. So there was a very nice, you can't call it a zoo, it's a panda kind of research center. And so it was very nice. The only thing disappointing for me there was that there was a so-called panda kindergarten. When we went there, the 2 pandas we saw were pretty big. They were not babies. I was expecting to see babies, and everything is panda there for marketing. This is an ice cream, a panda ice cream, panda t-shirt, and you name it, it's a panda. This is near Mount Imai, is this place called Lishan. A lot of Buddhist influence. You can see the Ashok chakras. Can you see these? These pillars are the lions and the Ashoka chakra that we are familiar with in India. Very Buddhist influence. And this is a 7th century Buddhist carving on the side of a mountain. This is called the Lishan Buddha, a very classical, very popular tourist center. You can see this crowd here in the lower left corner. We had to wait for an hour and 15 minutes to get a ticket to board this boat, which would take us on the river to show us that place. But a very nice experience altogether. So we reached Chengdu, which is the local big city, the first big city in southern China. Huge city, very modern, big circle here with a rose flower lit up at night. And Mao Zedong, big statue there, and underneath the big circle there is an underground shopping area. Again, one more music bar. You can say my good friend Sharad enjoying himself. So he was the big dancer in our troupe. Really enjoyed himself. One more, our walk in Chengdu, even in a big city, even with big roads, they have these beautiful areas, walkways next to a river, for example, and very quiet. Even though the traffic is heavy on the roads there in the back, you can see this place is very nice to walk in. And another area which is traffic free, again very popular, with a lot of eateries and shops and all that. This was about 2 kilometers from our hotel, and we walked down and spent an afternoon there. Very, very nice concept, and I wish we had these kinds of concepts in our cities as well, but we don't. Okay, then we made our way to Xi'an. From Chengdu, we went to another big city called Xi'an. And interestingly, we went through this area. You can see these nice buildings here. We had a little detour to this area, which is known for tofu. Tofu is soya protein. So in China, where it is very difficult to find something vegetarian, this is one area where we had a lot of soya protein, tofu preparations, and this place was known for it. So I enjoyed myself here with this vegetarian food. And interestingly, their traffic, that they have many traffic, there are many rest areas next to the highways, like you see in the United States or in Europe or UK, very many of them. But interestingly, they have areas where you can, a little outdoor gym, where you can stretch yourself, push-ups, pull-ups, exercises for the back and all that. This is Ankit, our photographer, doing something. I also did something like that. And it's very useful, if you spend 10-15 minutes there, when you have your break to stretch yourself, I think it's a great idea. Xi'an is known for two things. The so-called terracotta warriors, that is a must-see place, but I missed it. I and Sharad missed it because of a cock-up of our travel agent. We had to go to the visa office here, upper left corner, okay? That visa office to get a visa. So we had to spend time from 9 o'clock in the morning to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We missed the terracotta warrior place, but my friends who went there, perhaps to console us, said that there was nothing great there, and they also had to have a very long wait. But after 4, we went to the city wall. It's the same concept as the Great Wall in Beijing that you see. Very nice area. You could cycle on the city wall. It is a perimeter of 13.5 kilometers. 13.5 kilometers. We did only 1 hour. It takes 3.5 hours to do the whole bit. We rented this bike and biked for an hour up and down. Also popular among local tourists who come there for photo ops. And you can see that the city has grown well beyond the city wall, the old city wall. And, it's huge high-rises, apartments, and it's grown a lot, maybe 10 kilometers beyond this perimeter wall. But we had a great time that evening. Sharad Tanga again with me on the city wall. And then we were making our way from Xi'an to a place called Pingyao, an iconic, again, a little detour. This is the main road going this way, but we went about 30 kilometers away from there to a very nice place called the Hukao Falls. Nice, very nicely done. Interestingly, just like we tie things for our arali katte, our trees and all that, making wishes, we tie taitas and, we call them taitas and strings and all that. Same concept in China. These are for sale, So local people buy it there, write their wish and hang it on this designated area, believing that their wish will be fulfilled. Rainy day, but we could have enjoyed it better if it were sunny. Nevertheless, we had our raincoats and we managed to enjoy that. And the real interesting thing was this place called Pingyao. Pingyao was totally unexpected. We never thought it would be as beautiful as it actually was. This is Pingyao. This is a small town, not very common among foreign tourists, but it is between 8th and 11th centuries. They have sort of I'm sure it is refurbished, but they maintained that tradition. The streets are like that. For example, this was our hotel. Can you imagine a hotel like this? Small rooms, but comfortable rooms, small bathrooms, but neat bathrooms. The whole thing is like medieval China. Lots of shops and again, eateries and things like that. I was very glad that we stayed there overnight. We had some time there to have a walk around the town. They also have a city wall and they don't allow any traffic inside the city wall. You have to park outside the city wall and walk into it. But it's a very small city wall. You just have to walk 1 kilometer and you're in the middle of the town. And for those who cannot walk, they have some small eco-friendly electric buggies which will take you around. So Pingyao was a great experience. And this was our penultimate stop. From Pingyao, the next day we reached Beijing. We reached there on Sunday evening. We were leaving on the Tuesday morning back to India. Monday, our plan was to visit two iconic places in Beijing, which is the Great Wall of China, to see the Great Wall of China, and a place called the Forbidden City, which is a complex of palaces in the middle of Beijing. But unfortunately, it's closed on Mondays. So we couldn't go to the Forbidden City. I'll have to, if at all, make another trip to see that place. But we made up for it by going to Tiananmen Square. You guys must have heard of Tiananmen Square. That is the administrative capital of China, area of China, like our Vidhan Sauda, okay, or our Parliament House in New Delhi or whatever. So this is that square where you have iconic buildings, and this iconic building is the Mao Memorial, Mao Zedong Memorial. Very interestingly, even though they have these big memorials and statues and all that, the general mood in China now seems to be that Mao is going out of popularity. I mean, very few people now talk about the Cultural Revolution. In our minds, the Cultural Revolution of 1960 was sort of the path-breaking change in China. But people now are criticizing that, and it's a new China that is emerging, or that has emerged. Again, like we had that huge crowd in the Lishan Buddha, even for the Great Wall, for example, you can see the crowd here. The ticket is given far away in that shed there, and we had to wait an hour to reach that place, which essentially meant that we wanted to walk for 2-3 hours on the Great Wall, but we reduced it to 45 minutes because all that time, extra time, we had spent waiting in this queue. But crowds is something that you have to accept in China. As populous as we are, I'm told we're going to beat them very soon. All right, I think this is my last slide. And yes, we flew back from Beijing. The rest of the group were going beyond to Mongolia and then on to Russia. And beautiful, beautiful airport. I thoroughly loved the Beijing airport. It was beautiful in its architecture and very, very convenient. Large number of passengers, no queues, nicely marked. Even though some of those things were a little difficult, there were a few marks in English also, a lot of it in Chinese. But we did happily manage to get through our booking and our security and all that very, very nicely. Thank you very much for your very patient listening. And Rajgopal, you're absolutely on the dot. I did lose exactly 2 kilos on this trip. Absolutely spot on there.
Because that one picture,
yeah,
you are talking, and below your shirt was a bit loose. I can see
quite right.
That picture, particular one picture I could make on. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyway, nice.
Okay.
Very nice. Your adventure definitely expedition and all require firstly knowledge. Knowledge in what you are doing. Then of course determination and real strength. Whatever I don't have any much words.
Thank you. I mean, it's good.
You do it regularly.
Somehow I find this a lot more enjoyable than a conventional holiday in some resort somewhere, and I just would like it to be physically challenging as well. And thankfully, as of now, my health permits it, and so I would continue to do it until such time that my health permits it. Okay, so comments from the students. One thing I would like to mention here is that I would like all the youngsters here to develop this habit of having such outdoor activities and group activities. I'll tell you, it will have a direct effect on your functioning as a surgeon. I have no doubt about it. Surgery is a team activity, and you learn a lot of things when you go on such group activities, adjustment, putting up with others' idiosyncrasies, others putting up with your idiosyncrasies. None of us is perfect. Lack of food, lack of sleep, lack of physical comforts and things like that. And when you are prepared for that, when you do this on a regular basis, it will make you a better person. All right, comments. Now I'll make comments compulsory. Okay, starting with Sanya.
So very nice. Your entire journey. So take some tips from you and plan it as soon as possible, sir.
Yeah.
Everything is very much interesting. Starting from your first slide to the entire last slide, I was engaged totally.
Yeah. All right,
Very
Abdul.
nice.
Abdul, not there. He might have left. Okay. Apurva. Apurva is the young lady who joined her from the United States. She is now there. Go on, Apurva. She was with us as an observer some time ago. Yeah.
Hi, sir. Good evening, everybody. It was a very inspiring presentation, sir. I like traveling and I've done few treks in Himalayas, but this was something I don't know. I would like to do, but probably like 20 years down the lane.
20 years is too far away, Apurva. It should be faster than that. And Apurva was in China. You know, she trained to be a doctor in China, in the eastern part of China. And incidentally, when I went to Chengdu, our hotel was on a morning walk. We passed by their medical university and school, and I saw a few Indian students there. And so I was reminded of Apurva, and I messaged her from there. And she responded to say that she was in the eastern part of China. Guangzhou, what's it called, Apurva?
I was in the southern part of China called Guangzhou.
Guangzhou. That's right next to Hong Kong, isn't it?
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
sir. It's around 2 hours from Hong Kong.
Yeah. Nikita?
Sir, I have one question, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I thought that the stays were pre-booked, but you saying that you could extend the day stay, it changes the whole scenario, sir.
Yeah. Stays were soft pre-booked. You understand? So it was not a compulsory thing. The pre-booking was basically done for the visa, because the Chinese government wants to know where you're on a given day. That kind of monitoring is very essential for the government. So we had done that, but they were free cancellation. They don't charge you for cancellation. So we didn't stray from that program too much, but 1 or 2 days when we had a very long drive, for example, we would stop 2 hours earlier or something like that and make up for it the next day. So by and large, we stuck to the program. Yeah. Praveen?
Sir, how much is the total cost?
I wish you hadn't asked me. It's expensive, Praveen, because it cost me 8.5 lakhs. A lot of money. But what's happening is that, remember, this is not a holiday, it's an expedition. We are paying for the cost of the cars all the way through, even though I came away, I did only 40% of the trip, but we're paying for 100% of the distance. We are all the 10 members, we are sharing the cost. And the the permission to travel in China is very expensive. Okay, per car, it costs $2,500 US dollars. And the carne costs money, and the shipping cost from Vladivostok to Mumbai, all that costs money. And because just because you do a part of it doesn't make it any cheaper for you. But the choice for me was to travel for 2.5 months, all the way, to make best use of the money I was spending. But I didn't want to do that. 2.5 was too much of a time. I knew I could do it physically, but traveling for 2.5 months in the car every day, I thought it might not be as fun as doing it for, say, 27 days. So the cost was high. Yeah. Vinod?
So you made 8.5 lakhs until you reach the final spot, less the overall cost.
Yeah, and of course, the only extra cost these guys will have to pay for is their hotel and food, which is a very small amount. Take it from me, compared to the costs of diesel and all that kind of a thing. Yeah. Tolls, for example, tolls cost a lot of money, but we share it all the way through, not only in this segment.
Okay.
Praveen has said that. What happened to Vinod? Vinod, you're still there?
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, actually, I'm a person who doesn't like the tricks, sir. But for the first time, I'm getting itching to go for some trip.
Why don't you like trips then?
I'm not a person who doesn't like traveling in the bus, basically. Vehicles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you prefer to fly? Yeah. Why not? Yeah.
And
Very good. Yeah.
I'm very impressed with the way you presented, sir. I'm really
Yeah.
surprised to see that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining in.
Thank you, sir.
And particularly, it's very nice of Rajgopal to join in and stay the length, and I hope you found it interesting, and I hope you guys are motivated to undertake such adventurous kind of travel. All right. Good night, and thank you very much again. Sorry?
Share the link, sir. A lot of people want to know how.
All
this
right,
should happen.
we'll do that. I'll put it on YouTube.
Okay.
Okay, right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Good night.